From a lab's perspective, we have been diving very deeply into this sort of new AI world that is emerging, and I'm going to hopefully talk through some of it, and with the intention of, I think, trying to build a bit of an opinion around these things in order to help you guys, equip you guys as well with like just having a few little things to talk about, having some vision from a synthesis perspective. But also keep in mind that this is a highly emergent vision. The stuff is changing very rapidly, and we are trying our best to kind of keep up, but also at the same time trying to predict where these things are going, so that we can, attempt to stay on that wave front, I suppose. So this particular stream of work from labs we called codename Galactica, which is easily confused with a tool that we've produced called Galactic AI. But really, the intention of this is not to pitch to you the tool that we've built, but more to talk around the overall, like the sort of longer and more grand vision around building AI-driven applications. Okay, so let's see whether this presentation can go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so a new form of software has emerged. Now, this is like, guys, we are super lucky to be alive right now, because there really is a whole new form of software that has emerged in the last, I would say in the last few months, actually. So although we've had AI in the past, and we can classify images, and we can understand text, and we can segment images, etc. Those are all fine, and that's not really that new big disruptive form. Really, the new form of the new form that is starting to emerge is this sort of this glimmer around artificial general intelligence. So software which is, I would call like goal oriented, where you have a piece of software that you can give a sort of a pretty large macro goal to. You can say, hey software, I want you to build me an online e-commerce store that sells sneakers. And it could be as simple as that, like that simple, a description of a problem or of a goal, and then have this AI go and figure out how to do that through a sort of an iterative learning, discovery, reflection, etc. And figure out like what are the smaller tasks that need to be done, how to get feedback from humans, and have it all actually happen fairly autonomously. So it is super undefinable right now. It's hard to describe what this thing is called, because it's not quite AGI, artificial general intelligence. It's not quite, but it's along the pathway probably towards it. It's hard to say whether we will ever get there. Who knows? But it's certainly along that sort of spectrum. And it's a little bit smarter than just generating some text, or generating an image, or generating or classifying an image, which are the kind of the AI sorts of work that we've done in the past, or that the industry has done in the past. Really now it's this sort of composition of a whole lot of these AIs, but also attaching it to real world things. So some of the words you will see in this new domain of software engineering is generative AI, LLM, large language models, prompt engineering, language chains, AutoGPT or BabyAGI. These are two specific projects that are being worked on and have been named AutoGPT and BabyAGI. And then Mike Grant also talks about chain of thought, and chain of thought is really a fairly academic sort of idea around trying to keep a goal in mind while achieving subtasks. So it's not quite full-blown AGI, but it is certainly goal-oriented in a way, in a very open way. And so I describe it as like being open, meaning that you can give this fairly open-ended task. If you say to, like today, you can't write software where you tell it, hey, build me an e-commerce site which sells sneakers. Right? That's fairly open. It's like, no, you got to be a bit more specific. Like, what is this e-commerce site? Like, what sneakers are we selling? Like, how are you going to price them? All this kind of thing, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, we've got to break that down. Like humans have got to break down that goal into a whole bunch of other very complicated things. The idea with this domain of in this new emergent world is that we can have AIs try to figure out and break down those goals. So this is evolving super rapidly, and it's like crazy fast rapid. It really is like crazy fast rapid. Like I think AutoGPT today is 4 weeks old. BabyAGI maybe is a little bit older, but AutoGPT is currently the highest. I think in the last month, it's been the highest number of GitHub contributions of all time, and it's 4 weeks old. Okay, so I pulled this together. I can't remember where I got it. And so if you go and kind of generally look at generative AI or AI, you might see this. I think this was produced by Sequoia Capital, and I think it's being kept up to date. So there is a whole lot of companies in this domain for sure, and you'll recognize a bunch of them if you look carefully, and some new ones as well. And you'll see some old companies that are on here, and it's like they've attached some AI into their world. So yes, for sure, but don't be confused by this. There's this other one I pulled from some guy off of LinkedIn. I think actually maybe Keith sent it to me, and it's again a whole bunch of companies that are doing things in the sort of generative AI space. However, these are not the things necessarily that is this new emergent software pattern. These are absolutely necessary building blocks, but really where the interesting stuff is happening is in gluing these things together. And a lot of that is happening in the open source community. So what did I write here? However, there is very little glue. And that's where the real interesting stuff starts to happen. So what we don't see is a commercialized version of these open-ended, goal-oriented AIs in the commercial space yet. They're very much happening in the open source. Okay, so when we go and look at this stuff today, we see that the current state today is, like I call it, a beautiful mess. And here I've put on the side like a picture of a flying spaghetti monster, whatever a flying spaghetti monster might look like, maybe like that. I don't know. So there's tons of exciting stuff happening in this space. There's lots of demos. So you will see, I mean, if you go and look at this on Twitter or on LinkedIn, etc., you will see loads of people stringing together different building blocks of AIs in order to produce these goal-oriented AIs, which are more like orchestrative, I suppose. There's loads of hacks there. It's super low maturity, and it's not easy to use. It's very difficult to go and build in this space today because it is kind of so unstable. So our prediction, as from a lab's perspective, is we're playing in this domain. And yes, we can also build these sort of messy, dirty hacks and demos and create more noise in this environment. But our prediction as of today is that we think that the developer and the builder experience will be everything. This will be the sort of the winner in this space will be the one who produces the nicest developer and builder experience around these ideas of being able to allow developers to pull these things together very easily, very cohesively, fairly simply, in a way that they don't have to get into the nuts and bolts of it. We also predict that we'll see a convergence of, so we call it AI as a service, I suppose, but really it's AI developer experience as a service of these providers who will aggregate these services and present productive and reliable developer experiences over them. Yes, absolutely. So this will be the cloud moment for AI, I think, or the democratization of these ideas. So right now we're in this kind of on-prem world when it comes to AI. Okay, so to make this a little real, I tried to build an example of something that you could build using this idea of this emergent generative AI or AutoGPT type of view of the world. So, and this is it's like a non-enterprise example. This is not what our customers are probably wanting to do, but I thought this is quite an obvious one, but I thought it would be quite interesting to go through it anyway. So I've invented a person here. I don't know what her name is, but she's an indie game developer, and she is wanting to build an AI-driven dystopian role-playing game, right? She's called it Dystopia AI. I think it's a cool name, actually. Maybe we should build Dystopia AI. So her game, the way it works, and it's a PC game. Hopefully most of you guys have played some games in the past. Put up your hand if you haven't. And her game works by, you describe your hero and you describe the villain, right? And this game is going to generate all of the content. So you don't really see this today. I suppose maybe Minecraft is this kind of idea where it's this open game where players can go and create whatever they want, right? They can build their own buildings. They can create all sorts of things, right? This is at even a higher level, that it's sort of not even constraining players to the mechanics of that world. This idea is to say, actually, like, what kind of game do you want to play today? And if you can describe some of the elements of that game, let's have the game generate all the scenarios, generate all the content, generate all the characters, and have you play this unique game that no one else has ever played, that you will never play again. It's a game that generates games, right? That kind of idea. So in this game, we're going to describe our hero. So I've just written this very basic thing, that they are wearing a leather jacket, they have large boots, and they're carrying 2 sidearms. Describe the villain, an evil overlord, dark and mysterious in the form of a spider's body. Cool. So let's play this game. Okay, so, and this is just a demo, right? This isn't actually doing it. I haven't gone and built this game that creates games, but all of the content from here on is generated all by AIs. And all of the decisions are generated by AI. So I just pulled it together and put it into a PowerPoint, right? Or into a Figma. But technically, you could go and write some code that does that very same thing. So here is a scene now in this new game where we described our villain and hero, and we're in the final battle. So obviously the hero has arrived on the scene, and there is the villain. But look, it's like we've used Midjourney to generate an image of our hero, and it's pretty accurate. He's wearing some large boots. He's wearing a leather jacket. He's carrying 2 sidearms. Brilliant. Obviously, the game developer has also described the kind of the overall scene of it being a dystopian type of view of the world, right? Anyway, and here's our overlord. He certainly looks like a spider. He does look dark and mysterious, I guess. I don't know. And anyway, and here is the text. So this is the overlord now speaking to the hero, and he says, finally you've arrived. I've been expecting you, hero. You're just in time to witness the fruition of my master plan. Soon the world will be consumed by my rot, and nothing will be left but chaos and despair. Then the hero says, I've come to put an end to your twisted schemes, overlord. You've terrorized the world long enough. Your reign of darkness is about to meet its end. Oh, and also here I've got a note. I don't know if my audio if my computer's audio will come through. Do you think it will? Is there a trick I have to do in Teams to make that work? But anyway, I do have an audio generated for this. I don't think you can hear it, but anyway, I have used an AI also to generate the 2 voices. So I am actually voice stuff. I just couldn't play it through Figma, unfortunately. I'll send it to you later or something. Anyway, you can play the audio. There is audio for each of these voices of these 2 agents. And then the action that the overlord does is the overlord reveals the soul crystal, and his eyes grow bright red. Behold the soul crystal, the source of my unimaginable power. With this, my control over the rot will be absolute, and even you, hero, will be unable to resist. Gaze into my glowing red eyes and witness the inevitable doom of this pathetic world. Okay, so then the AI says, actually, so here's the game, right? Choose carefully, like, what do you do next? And these actions were presented and offered by the AI, saying like, well, what do you do now as the hero? Do you want to stand and fight? Do you want to bargain and plead? Or would you want to try and force surrender from this guy? And look, the scenes have evolved slightly. Look, we've now got this overlord. I don't know what this soul crystal thing has done, but it has made the overlord even more menacing and scary. So what should we do? Should we stand and fight? Okay, I'm going to choose stand and fight. Stand and fight. I've faced countless challenges to get here. You're just another obstacle in my way. Your time is up, overlord. Your confidence amuses me, hero, but you'll find that I'm no mere obstacle. My power is unparalleled, and soon the world will crumble beneath my feet. And then there's a resolution. So this is what happens, right? For the stand and fight, the hero engages in a heated battle. The hero expertly dodges in a swift, decisive moment with the overlord, blah, 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 blah. So a whole bunch of stuff happens. And we even have like some new images generated for the stand and fight image. And that's the end of the game. I suppose we could go and choose some other choices. What if we bargained and pled? Some other stuff about asking, is there truly nothing left? Can you not see the devastation? It's not too late to stop. And he goes, no. And then he fights. And here you can see a different scene emerging. We force surrender. What do you say, overlord? I'll give you one last chance to surrender. No, probably not. And you can see some other image is generated, right? So that is the cool game that I think I could probably build quite easily using a whole bunch of different AIs today. So I just kind of drew a diagram of how you would do this in order to try to illustrate what a mess this space is right now. So here is our app that we've built, the Dystopia AI. I kind of draw it as a big flying spaghetti monster because I feel that it is. This is what you would need to do. Probably want to orchestrate your prompts in a way to get the language models to generate you your content and also generate your choices, but also to allow you to pick those choices and generate further content down this kind of tree of choices. And this would happen kind of in real time. As a hero makes a choice, you would then ask the AI to generate the next set of content. So you wouldn't go and pre-generate all of this because technically there's an almost an infinite amount of content that you could generate. So you would generate it kind of on demand and your game would evolve as it's being played. So you would probably today use something like prompt layer and or something called LangChain. So you might use LangChain in order to talk to prompt layer, and it's kind of unclear as to whether these things compete with each other or work with each other. They feel like they do very similar things. They're both open source projects. So the orchestration of the content is happening through LangChain or prompt layer. Those things probably invoke some large language model like GPT-4, but it could be anything else. It could be a self-hosted Llama model. It could be Google Bard. It could be Azure AI, whatever. So invoke some kind of large language model. I suppose you could invoke it yourself directly, but then you would have the problem of having to manage the prompt engineering yourself. Audio for those villain and heroes voices, I used 11 Labs. You can use 11 Labs to generate your audio files. The images are generated through Midjourney. And so 11 Labs will produce us an API sort of thing. There's a Python kind of interface to it. LangChain and prompt layer also sort of Python APIs. Midjourney, interestingly, doesn't really have an API. In fact, you talk to Midjourney through Discord. So you need to speak to Midjourney through pretending to be a user on Discord or being a user on Discord. So that's not really an API. You're going to have to super hack around getting that to work. You could speak to DALL-E though, which is also OpenAI, and they have an API. However, DALL-E is not quite as nice as Midjourney. Midjourney certainly produces more. So all of the images in my presentation are generated by Midjourney, and they're quite a lot more gamey than DALL-E. DALL-E is maybe a little bit more creative in its kind of style, whereas Midjourney is like quite contemporary maybe in its style. And then of course you'd also have to figure out how you deploy this thing onto AWS as well. But you can look at this architecture and you can go, wow, this is a pretty simple game, but we've needed to talk to a whole bunch of different APIs. And in this example, I've chosen like all fully managed APIs. Like there is no need for this game developer to have trained her own models, nor is she managing her own models. So you can imagine how complex this does become when you want to start hosting your own models. And even though we've used all of these fully managed services, you are still left as the developer with the entire problem of orchestrating, prompt engineering, parsing those prompts, the flow of how those prompts orchestrate, the storage of what AI is like writing those images and text back to something, retaining history so that there's this chain of thought kind of works, authentication, security, etc. So in fact, these AIs, although they're very good at generating content, they really actually, none of them really are pulled together in a way that a developer can make use of them easily. Or not even, yeah, they're incredibly difficult to make operational. So behold, the Battlestar architecture. And this is that vision of the future. This is what I think, and I think the labs team think, and I think probably a whole lot of our AI community think, is that we will see this will be the winning architecture over time. This is kind of the AWS. Someone like AWS will come in and do this and clean this up. And so the idea here is that there is this kind of overall architecture for access to everything. So here's our game. It's no longer the spaghetti architecture. It's now this cool battleship. But we'll have APIs for language models, so Llama or GPT-4, self-hosted or fully managed by companies, no problem, but a consistent API to those language models and a consistent way of authenticating to them and a consistent way of passing data in and out of them, etc. Some consistency there so that we can swap these out fairly easily and or upgrade to others and just make it generally easy. It's kind of, if you think of the way AWS invented S3 for storage, it's like, it's amazing, right? It has become an industry standard for other storage providers. S3 has become a new standard. You need a way of generating visuals. So this could be Midjourney or DALL-E or Segment, anything. There's a whole bunch of interesting AIs in the visual space that will understand images, generate images, remove items from images, classify images, etc. And we need a consistent API for these. Every single one of those examples is a completely different project with a completely different company behind it, potentially, or open source project, and they have a completely different view on how that API should work, whether it's a service or whether you have to host it yourself. Same thing probably for voice. So either generating voice or understanding voice, we probably need a consistent API to those. And then things like tasks. So tasks are not really AIs, but it's allowing AIs to invoke actions on the internet, right? So allowing an AI to search for things, and that could be maybe invoking Google search or Bing search or whatever, being able to browse and navigate websites is something that an AI might want to do. But we need a consistent way that an AI can invoke that idea. So if we ask GPT-4, if we're using GPT-4 to generate our content or generate its sets of things that it wants to do, how does it go and search for something at Google? We need a consistent way for those AIs to know what they are allowed to do on the internet. This is that agency topic that Mike talks about. Submit things, track things. This could be like, I want to be able to track parcels or track progress of something. I want to track a ticket. Someone has opened a ticket in my help desk, and I need my AI to go and see what the status of that ticket is. So how does he do that? So how do we give agency to AIs in a consistent way? And then, of course, the developers are also going to need to be able to, they will want to run their stuff somewhere, right? Yes, they'll develop it on their laptops for sure, but at some point, this thing has to go into the world. And so you need some sort of more general cloud ideas. So computation and storage, those two together actually is all that cloud really is compute and storage, right? But the compute requirements for AI things are slightly different to general. Same for storage. That compute may want, if it's running self-hosted models, it may want access to GPUs or to clusters of GPU potentially. You also, maybe your computation though could be at a higher level. It doesn't necessarily have to be code written and deployed to servers, but it could be orchestration of flow. So you could think into the future as AutoGPT and BabyAGI become more powerful and more easy to pull together. You could have this higher level way of programming them in more of a DSL, a domain specific language of just stringing them together rather than writing Python code or Rust code or whatever to build them. You could think that there's this higher level of view. It's sort of the way maybe AWS started with EC2, but then moved to something like Lambda and serverless, right? It's like a higher level way of running code on the cloud where you like don't care about the server, just, or Fargate or whatever. It's like a higher level way of programming these things. And then of course, storage, of course, things like file systems is very important, but in the AI world, there is a sort of a different class of database, which becomes very useful, something called a vector database, which is something that allows text to be easier searched and easier clustered. So be able to create relevance. So say as your game is being played, you may want to kind of search the history of what has happened in your game in order to create the next set of content, to keep it kind of relevant. Vector databases are sort of the thing that allows you to do that, where you can say, hey, this concept is similar to a concept that we've seen prior. So like, what is it? And pull that out. And a vector database is the way of pulling relevance out of text, which is very useful with prompt engineering. Okay, so that is it. It's consistent AI access, security, authentication, etc., and then presenting various options at the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Very much like what AWS has done in its last 20 years. It started with a thin set of services, and it just slowly filled out this ecosystem, but it kept some ideas very consistent. Yeah, and probably at some point, this then starts to graduate into becoming considered more enterprise ready. I think today, if we look at I'm just going to go back to this diagram. This is zero enterprise ready. Any bank or large retailer looking at an architecture that looks like this will absolutely panic. You know, these things are like, we are sending our data to GPT-4. We are running these, like, where are these things running? We're running them in like on developers' laptops. Who is 11 Labs? Why are they eating data and generating things? How are we interfacing with some service via Discord? It's like, is that legal, right? The only thing they're probably happy with is like, oh, we deploy to AWS. That's great. That's fine. That's certified. Everything on the right of this is probably a security person's absolute nightmare at an enterprise. So by building out an architecture that looks a little bit more like this, you can start to say, well, actually, this whole thing is packaged and can be deployed into a bank's infrastructure, into a retailer's infrastructure. So it's within the security boundaries of their own enterprise. Down the line, you know, that's a down the line. So from a lab's perspective, we have started. We have very far, we are 1% along this journey towards building this thing. I'm not even convinced that we should build it yet. I'm keen to hear your guys' feedback and a lot of people's feedback as to, is this something we should build? Is this, or do we just sit back and wait for it to arrive and then start building in that thing, in that new platform? So Galactic AI, the tool that I think I'm sure you've probably become, that you've seen a million times in the newsletter, etc., and on channels, is you can go and play with it today. You could go to galacticai.co. You can go and download it. It's really just a little command line tool that will allow you to generate some stuff. We have XXX active users. I think it's about 50. And we've had loads of interest on social media around it. It certainly creates a whole lot of interesting talking points. We've even had a troll on our LinkedIn. Someone has trolled us, got very upset that we were releasing tools like this into the wild, and et cetera, et cetera. I think it is pretty valuable to some people. I certainly use Galactica almost daily, and I find it useful when I'm writing code, for sure. It's very single dimensional, but it's certainly a start. And it certainly doesn't have the depth or the stickiness of the Battlestar architecture. But you can see it is useful. It's exciting on social media, so give it a go. And that is it, guys. That is the end of my presentation. Look at that, 30 minutes on the dot. That's all I needed. Do you guys have any questions, or should I look through? Wow, there's lots of comments here.
Yeah, so Tom, thank you. I mean, it's not really a question, it's an observation. I think you asked, like, is it worthwhile going down the journey? And I think it's only when you're on the journey, and this was right in the comment, that you gain enough insight to have an opinion as to what let's say an appropriate architecture, an appropriate offering would look like. But without going down the journey, without trying to do something, you never have that opinion. So you always actually are the uninformed person in the room, or the unopinionated person in the room. And I think that's always the worst person to be, right? So, so I think this is actually, if nothing else, it's giving synthesis an opinion on all of these technologies and how they fit together, which I think is tremendously valuable, because a lot of our clients come to us and ask us for advice, or you know, on this journey, how to go. So I think even at its like most minimal value level, there's value, huge value.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake.
Hey, Tom, amazing as always. If you go back to your other slide, Tom, your Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar, yes.
Battlestar. Okay, so telling stories and games is one thing, but like imagine, I know we're discussing moving our proposals to PowerPoints. How cool would it be if our proposals were as sexy and slick as your presentations with all of these cool images, where the images are topical to what we're trying to do? So yeah, I mean, like when you showed me this, I'm like, damn it, man, PowerPoints are just zip files, slides are just XML files. Like, surely we can repurpose this for like jazzing up our sales stuff. But like, so what if we built, what if we tried this out internally for the sales thing, because yeah, I mean, look, that Mid-Journey API, I don't know how are you doing it? Is it by hand at the moment, or that Discord thing? It's not great, eh? But
yeah. Do you want to see a demo?
yes, please. Are you paying for the account, or are you on the free thing?
No, there's no free thing anymore. They're so popular that they've given up free. But what would you like to? So you just go /imagine. This is why it's not an API. You literally speak through Mid-Journey. So what do we want to see? A what?
Something to do with
an evil banker.
Financial surveillance breach or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, surveilling a set of financial criminals in the style of Vermeer.
Oh, we lost your screen share, Tom.
Oh, sorry. Probably Discord, because it likes to be the streamer. See if is that back? Yeah. So I just said in the style of, so you always, when you're generating images with Mid-Journey, you must be clear about the style. So you can see when I generated images for that presentation, the dystopian one, I always said in the style of a dystopian cartoon, optic art, Apple Core, Dan Mumford, flat shading, Intel Core, Candy Core. And this was like a prompt I found out in the wild, right? That I just found some images that I liked, and then I popped them into Mid-Journey and asked it to describe the style. And then I just took its style and played it back to it. So you can ask, Mid-Journey can describe the style as well. So here I've asked in the style of Vermeer, and I don't know if you know Vermeer, but there's a big, it's very popular.
Yeah.
Very popular Dutch, and he's currently exhibiting. Well, his stuff is being exhibited in Amsterdam. So I know his style quite well now. And this is absolutely his style. But like, there's some weird shit going on here. You have to look quite, if you look carefully at faces, there's like some weird stuff. Mid-Journey doesn't get faces perfect, nor hands. It's getting much better though. You can see fingers are a bit funky. Look, here's a Vermeer. Yeah. But if you curate Mid-Journey, you can get some great results. And you just keep trying. Like here you can see as I was generating images of spaghetti monsters, etc. Just kind of tweaked it, flying through the, So
awesome, man. I think we need to practice prompting for sales context, right? There's a prompting workshop we need to play with. Cool. Thanks. Great presentation.
Maybe. Cool. Thanks, Luke.
Can you see my little shared thing with the hero's voice? I think people have missed out on the hero's voice. Then if you can.
I've come to put an end to your twisted schemes, Overlord. You've terrorized the world long enough. Your reign of darkness is about to meet its end.
There we go. Yeah.
I thought it was just criminal not to have that as part of the presentation. Now that you prepared it.
Well done. Yeah. Thank you.
Super cool.